You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast post-game show brought to you by DraftKings, America's #1 sportsbook app. Joined by the great Ben White. I am merely Mike Luke. All right, Ben, we've got a lot to get to in this show. First of all, big shout out to everybody that showed up here. A lot of people out here back in the A. Awesome stuff. 94-85 Arizona wins. And honestly, Ben, we're going to break this all down, but give me your initial thoughts first.
Yeah, I just thought initially, there was obviously some cause for concern there, especially in the first half. And the majority of the first half of the second half of the way Stanford was hitting threes. I mean, it was kind of a dose of deja vu as to how they played up in the Bay Area about a month or two ago when these two teams met in the regular season. So I thought for 32 minutes of that game, Arizona might have been in some trouble, but obviously in the last 8 minutes, their guards were able to pull through with some big key turnovers and really turn the pressure up defensively, and Arizona was able to squeeze out of here with a 11-point win. So pretty good considering the circumstances.
And again, I was wrong, as I usually am. 95-84 was the score right there, but this was a game, though, where you got to give a lot of kudos to Oumar Ballo early on. The leader of men out there played just like that, Ben, because a lot of guys were struggling throughout, and we're going to get to all of that. Kurt Kriisa struggled, obviously got an injury. We'll talk about that. Pelle Larsson didn't play well till the end, but Oumar Ballo with that high-low action, especially early on, was the one that kept Arizona afloat and got Arizona that lead.
Yeah, it was immediate. I think Arizona, from a paint perspective, you look at what they did tonight, 54 points in the paint,
right?
And I think 32 of those or so came in the first half. So Arizona was just able to feed the ball inside to Ballo. Didn't really have an answer for them. Spencer Jones and those guys up front just obviously don't match up with Ballo and Tubelis very well. So Ballo's one of those guys where once you get him going offensively, he's really what kept Arizona afloat. I mean, you got to remember, too, the majority of the first half there, Stanford was shooting 71, 72% from three. I mean, these are video game type numbers, and it's amazing that Arizona was able to still have that 5 to 7 point cushion. And it comes down to, what have we talked about with this team? If there's some lacks on defense, if another team shooting really hot, what's the one constant that keeps Arizona in these games? It's their bigs, and you saw it tonight.
And that's to talk about it. And we joke about the peaks, and but at the end of the day, these are the guys. These are the ones that are going to keep Arizona afloat. They are the iceberg peaks, I guess. Well, that was just stupid. But I guess what I'm saying though is that every single game, Arizona's got guys that are going to be kind of, and we're going to try to get into as many comments as we can, but Arizona with those two guys, we've talked about it before. You need to be able to get 40 points, 25 rebounds, something along those lines. You got exactly that, actually a little bit more from them. And not only that, they were timely, Ben. Yes. And like I said, you had Oumar Ballo that carried this team through the first half. Zoo really gets going there in that second half. And from there on out, man, I mean, then you get the role players going. You start getting the Pelle Larssons, the Ced Hendersons, who we're going to get to in just a second. But, again, this game to me all starts and stops with the peaks right there. And, again, why not even – there's never even been a better time for a DraftKings – or, excuse me, a Four Peaks read. All right, you might say to yourself, Mike, the Four Peaks, just as cool as Four Peaks, the 4 U of A big men, are Four Peaks, the official brew of PHNX Sports. Now, let's say that you're like our good friend Shane Diefenbach. You're a little bit younger out there. You want to go, you want to get some Four Peaks. That's where you go. Downtown Tempe location right there. Or you can come to the Tap and Bottle Watch Parties. Tap and Bottle Watch Parties again, and get yourself some Four Peaks as well. Check out the show notes and the link in the description. But again, very honored to have Four Peaks as the official brew of PHNX Sports. And let me just get to that disclaimer real quick here. We've sorry about that one. All right, just a second. All right, but you already know the best place to spend St. Patty's Day, Four Peaks, 8th Street Pub, of course. Hang with your favorite degenerates, us, and enjoy a damn good time. Must be 21 and up. Enjoy responsibly. And Tap and Bottle, the Tap and Bottle Watch Parties. All right, now, people like Shane Diefenbach have not been to the Tap and Bottle Watch Parties. They are the lesser man for it.
Yes.
Ben White has been there. Ben White is standing strong. And you know what? We had Matt Muehlbach come up. We've had many greats come up there again. Good stuff. Check it out. Again, Tap and Bottle Watch Parties. And you can get Four Peaks there. So again, Scott and Rebecca do a great job. Support local. That's what you want right there. All right. The great thing about this game right here, though, Ben, is that Arizona, with the way that they played in this game, you got the two peaks right there, or the two big men. But Cedric Henderson, we got to talk about Ced right here. This is a guy that, again, He took the path less traveled. Came from Campbell College, I believe. Father NBA player. He's been a little bit up and down, but since he's come into the starting lineup, he's been kind of a consistent guy out there. Granted, he played terribly against UCLA, but I think you could argue, and I'm going to argue that point, not just could, but I think this was the best game of his career. You look at it, 23 points, 3 assists, 3 steals. Ced was everywhere on the court.
Yeah, he was, and I think he's the difference tonight between Arizona maybe winning by 5 or 6 points and Arizona winning by 11 points. I mean, you talked about timely shots. This guy was making timely shots all night, whether it was from the outside, whether it was a mid-range floater, and I think from a defensive perspective, what this team was able to do in the second half, really turning up ball pressure and really zoning in on their guys, because we can be honest here, in the first half, Arizona's guards had a tough time staying in front of Stanford.
Right.
And that's by and large why Stanford was able to make as many threes as they were. They had wide open looks here and there, making easy shots in the lane, which typically Arizona doesn't allow guards to do. But Ced's one of those guys who not only can he get you 20, 25 points a game if need be, but he's also a guy who does so much more offensively and defensively that doesn't show in the box score. There was a timely turnover, I think, with about 7 or 8 minutes left where he was able to force the ball in, and then after that, Ramey follows by creating a turnover, and then Arizona was able to swing and get that momentum back after that Kerr-Tex. So really good things from Ced tonight, and definitely probably his best game for sure.
All right, the great Shane Diefenbach has by the numbers ready right here. I don't know how are we doing this exactly, Shane, because I don't have it actually on my screen.
Well, I can just read them out to you.
All right,
obviously, the final score, 95 U of A, 84 Stanford. Field goal percentage, this is the number that stands out to me, 64% for the Wildcats, right. 49% for Stanford, 47% from the 3 for the Wildcats, 48 for Stanford. But 54 points in the paint for the Wildcats is where this game really took a big part of it.
And Shane, who do you give the credit to those 54 points in the paint?
Tommy Lloyd? Ballo?
No, the players. who are we pushing here? The peaks. So again, the 4 peaks right there, or the 2 peaks right there. But here's another thing that I thought when you look at the numbers right here. Yeah. Stanford goes 14 to 29 from 3. 14 to 29 from 3. Yeah. And generally, when I don't care who you're playing, if you have a team that goes 14 to 29, you're probably going to lose that game.
Yeah.
And Arizona, though, was able to, in a weird way, and again, I know that Stanford was able to, cut into the lead a little bit, but Arizona was essentially able to keep them at arm's length despite that, Ben White.
Yeah, I mean, the margin for error for this team has done nothing but go up throughout the year. I mean, come November, December, we talked about that back in the day of the non-conference games before heading into Pac-12 play. You'd look at somebody like Tubelis and Ballo, as automatic as they were. They've obviously made progressions as well, but point being, the big question that's lingered is, what are you going to get out of your guards? I mean, Kreese is a guy who, when he's hitting shots, but at the same time, you saw it tonight, and we're going to get to the shoulder injury because Lloyd does have an update for us on that. But if he's not hitting shots, he's just not as effective. I get that he's kind of the focal point of moving the ball up the court, and I get that he's really a terrific passer, can get the ball inside, but when he's hot, when he's off and just not consistent, I think the team kind of suffers. And where Arizona's been able to make that up this year is guys like Ramey, guys like Henderson stepping up, stringing together some level of consistency that we just didn't see from them earlier in the year. Guys who were hitting maybe 4 to 7 points a game now are consistently, whether it's Ramey, whether it's Ballo, and Larson shy of 10 today, still 9, but he's not somebody that we were talking about double-digit scoring figures earlier in the year. So if you're getting, 2 guys out of those 4 giving you double-digit scoring, despite Stanford shooting as well as they did, and despite some of the turnovers that U of A gave up tonight, they're still in a great spot. I think the margin for error has definitely improved, and this team does, need be, go 7 deep now. We've tightened up the rotation. We're at that point in the year going into March Madness where we obviously need to be there, but this team just has more depth than it did certainly in the beginning of the year, and it's been huge in accolades like tonight. So.
All right, let's say that you want to make some money right here, and you're saying to yourself, run your pool right there. And again, if you can pull that one, let's see here, the disclaimer right here. But run your pool. All right, here's the deal. March Madness is coming, and we've teamed up with Run Your Pool to give you a chance to compete in a bracket challenge. Fill out your picks for 64 teams in the tournament. Again, that's your picks right there. And get points for each pick you get right. Who's your Cinderella this year? You know who would be your ultimate Cinderella because nobody ever expects anything from them? ASU. So again, if you put ASU in there,
Shane D will like that.
Hey, they got to get in first.
Yes.
Let's win tonight first.
But again, here's where it gets even better, Shane Diefenbach. First place winner gets $300 cash prize, $75 DNVR locker gift card, man.
PHNX locker.
PHNX, excuse me. Those things are going like hotcakes this time of the year. Then you got second place, $150 cash prize. Third place, $50. And again, here's the cool thing. It is free to play. Here's the important dates. All right. March 12th. By 5 p.m., that's Selection Sunday. March 14th to 15th, first 4 play-in games not included in the bracket. March 16th, first game tips off at 10:15 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. That is the deadline to fill out your bracket right there. So that's what you want to do with the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Now, again, I don't know why, but the disclaimer got cut off here. If you happen to have that, Shane, otherwise I will look this up.
I'll find it. Just keep talking.
All right, I will keep talking right now. All right, but so you got Arizona though now, and we need to talk about Kerr Kriisa because it does seem like we have an update on Kerr Kriisa. Ben White, what are you hearing from your sources on the inside?
I'm hearing from my sources on the inside that it looks like it's a minor shoulder injury and it will be reevaluated tomorrow. So more to come there. That's
going to be a fascinating situation because again, Kerr Kriisa is a guy who, I mean, let's be honest here. Kerr Kriisa is. He's a lightning rod, I think, for U of A fans. I think for opponents alike. He is that dude right there. Yeah. And not only is he that guy, he is the guy who he stirs the drink right there. Now, you could say to yourself, well, I don't like the drink he stirs. I don't care because he's 59-7 or 59-8 as a starter. You know, those numbers, they speak for themselves right there. So he's an integral part of what Arizona wants to do. But Kylan Boswell right there, this is a guy that, you know, he's only 17, but...
Didn't know that.
Yes, but Kylan Boswell, though, is also going to probably get the keys to the get the keys to the Ferrari right here. Yeah. And I'm interested to see what he can do, Ben, if he plays the entire game.
Yeah, and as he should, and he will. I mean, he's definitely a guy, like you said, he's so young. He definitely has the most upside out of all the guards on this team. And I think when you look at the way he comes in, it's not like we're bringing him off the bench in spots where Arizona is up by a significant amount or the pressure's not high. He goes in there and he gives them a spark. I mean, the stakes are high. And not only does he go in there efficiently, but he makes a timely shot immediately.
Right.
I think Lloyd brought him off, 5-6 minutes into the game, and automatic three. I think there were 2 back-to-back. And he's obviously a guy who swings the momentum. And I think he brings, despite being, 6'2", 6'3", whatever it may be, he's not the tallest guy, but he certainly brings a level of athleticism that I think some of these other guys that won't necessarily bring. It's not to say that Kriisa isn't an efficient passer. It's not to say Kriisa doesn't do a great job of running this offense, but it's good to have some versatility, and it's good to have guards who can do different things. And I think we're at a point in the year where you see what Boswell can do, you see what Kriisa can do, and you see what Ramey can do. They all bring very unique things to the table.
Right, and I think what's also interesting about Boswell, though, you look at him from a defensive perspective, but first, that's a tease right here, because I have the Run Your Pool background in front of me right now. Again, here it is. Head over to https://play runyourpool.com/PHNX, and don't forget to get your picks in when your bracket is live. And again, Run Your Pool is the home of competition, bringing sports fans and friends together. RYP has over 50 games for every sport you can think of. It's a one-stop shop for everything with over 2 million players. There's no better place to play with your family and friends. Have fun right there. All right, that was done like a pro. It really wasn't. That was actually very amateur on my part. But let's talk about Kylan Boswell. Kylan Boswell is a guy that, I'll be honest, when I first watched Boswell this year, I was thinking to myself that, all right, it's going to take some time because he's coming off a foot injury. Yep. And not only is he coming off a foot injury, he is, let's be honest here, he just did not look right. The game looked a little too fast for him.
Yep.
But I almost said the Tommy gun. Tommy Lloyd said, trust me, he's going to be good. He's going to be one of the best point guards to ever come through here. I don't know that I go that far, But if he were to be all conference sooner than later, it would not surprise me in the least.
Yeah, and I think what the loaded gun statement there is, it can be right or it can be wrong. I mean, you can't say one way or the other right now, but you certainly, if you have to pick a direction, you would lean towards that being right. I mean, this is a guy who comes in, like we just said, right? Timely shots, can run the offense, brings a level of athleticism that some of these other guards don't bring. And definitely when you get somebody that young, you can mold them and develop them into whatever type of player you want them to be. And I think we've only seen 2 years of Lloyd, but nobody certainly here is questioning his player development. That's for sure.
Not only is somebody not questioning his player development, you might say to yourself, and we've had people that have said this, have said, you know what? He doesn't recruit domestically the way that I like it. You hear that? That's a common refrain right there. Yeah. But, the way that he develops players, you just look at this. You look at, and this is with all due respect to Sean Miller. I'm sure our good friend Shane Diefenbach would love to have Sean Miller at ASU, but he doesn't. But you look at Sean Miller, there was no way that Koloko and Ben Mathurin were going to materialize in the way they did from year 1 or year 2 to year 3 and year 1 to year 2, the way they did under Tommy Lloyd. You could say the exact same thing maybe about Azuolas Tubelis, maybe not. He's a little bit different. But then you just go on and on down the list. You look at Pelle Larsson, same exact case. Where an Oumar Ballo, I think, is obviously the obvious choice right there because I'll be honest with you. When Oumar Ballo came here, I thought he'd be roster filler. I thought he would be a guy that throw some elbows, get your bike knee pads dirty. And
Koloko gets hurt last year, and lo and behold.
Yeah,
right?
Lo and behold. And now you've got him, and, he's a little limited. I don't think that anybody's saying that he isn't. But this was a massive game for him, and he's had massive games like this, Ben White.
Yeah, he has, and he was getting beaten up tonight, man. I mean, we can talk about the officiating, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit into that a little bit later, but there were just, watching it courtside, there were several instances where Stanford just totally got away with contact, just nicky-nacky things that should have been called. So Stanford was throwing the kitchen sink at him, and it didn't seem to matter. And obviously when you're Stanford, you don't quite, you have some size, but you don't have the athleticism and versatility to stop somebody like that. And despite the efforts that they threw at him, Ballo was able to do what he was able to do. And, you're exactly right. He's a guy who came in, people thought that he was going to kind of fill a spot. He was going to maybe develop into a sixth man, a seventh man off the bench, but nobody really thought he would be the anchor of Arizona's front court the way he's played for sure.
Yes, exactly. And I think with him, unlike Tubelis to a certain extent, with Tubelis, you expect him, let's be honest, when you have the talent that Azuolas Tubelis does, you expect him every single game to basically go out and get 20 and 10. And I think when he had kind of that late season swoon right there, I think a lot of people were surprised by it because that's not the Azuolas Tubelis that we had seen before. Now, with Tommy Lloyd, or excuse me, not with Tommy Lloyd, with Oumar Ballo, he's going to be a little bit more up and down right now. And by the way, appreciate everybody on there. Ben, I'm going to get on there as well right now. I should be on YouTube as we speak. But again, this was a big-time game for Arizona. This was a big-time look all the way around. Now, there are some things that we need to talk about here because this was far from a perfect game. Yep. And I think that's and we need to start with Kerr Kriisa right here. And again, I don't want to beat up somebody that's coming off of an injury, obviously. Yep. But he cannot get the technicals that he ends up getting. He can't have those happen. Yep. And there's been multiple times throughout his career. Granted, that technical didn't come back to bite Arizona.
It actually worked in their favor, which is the ironic part. But your point still stands.
Right, exactly. But if you and I watched it up close, having media seats right there. But he chirps nonstop to the officials. And multiple times the officials told him, hey, I need you to, basically be quiet. And he keeps going. I think at some point you're going to be like, all right, dude, you're going to end up getting a technical that you're not going to be able to come back from. And that's what I worry about when it comes to him.
Yeah, I think that's very valid. And I think, obviously he only had 2 tonight, but he's definitely a guy with the way he plays. He's racking in 3 to 4, sometimes pushing 5 fouls. Right. And it's just, we go back to the Indiana game. I believe it was the Indiana or Tennessee game where it was kind of a similar situation where he was out of bounds, I think making contact with an official or something just ludicrous like that he shouldn't have been doing. And it's one thing if you're doing that in November and December if you're a freshman. It's another thing to be the age he is and at the point where we are in the season.
Right.
And you can't do it. You just can't.
You can't do it. I am curious to see what exactly happens with what exactly happens to all of this and with going forward. But he had to shoot his free throw with his left hand. And as our buddy Jason Shear said, I'll tell you this. I would not play him tomorrow because he is so important to what Arizona wants to do. I would not play him tomorrow if there's any chance that he could end up that he could injure this more than he already did. Because again, no matter what you say, he's already he's a very important part of what Arizona wants to do out here.
Yeah, and as cool as this event is, it's an awesome event. If you haven't come, obviously come. But as cool as the Pac-12 tournament is, from a seeding perspective and kind of what they're trying to do in March, health really does have to come first at this point. I think Arizona, it gets interesting with UCLA as to what happens tomorrow, but I think Arizona, for the most part, probably has a good idea of where they're going to be playing come March. And with that being said, right, you want to preserve the health of somebody like Kriisa. Doesn't sound like it's too serious based off some of the quotes that Lloyd is throwing out there, but time will tell. Just looking at some of the comments here, Jervis Williams makes a great point, going back to Boswell, when he talks about just the confidence in his body language out there.
Yeah.
I think when you watched him come into the game, come November, come back in November and December early in the season, like you said, the game seemed a little bit too fast. He looked like a 17-year-old out there, and for as young as he still is and as much upside as he has, he doesn't look like he's 17 out there. The confidence shows.
Right. All right, guys. Have I told you about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX?
Not quite.
All right. Here's the deal. You can throw down $5. Again, $5. And you can get up to $200 in free plays if you're a new customer. You might say to yourself, Mike, that sounds too good to be true. It's not too good to be true because it is true right there. Everybody's on DraftKings Sportsbook app. Now, there are some stipulations, though. 21 and up, Arizona only. And remember, if you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. They'll get you taken care of again. But this is the time of the year where you want to be on the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the University of Arizona. I thought they were a good bet to be able to take it and win the championship. Shane Diefenbach said off record that he predicts Arizona to win it all as well and that he's rooting for the University of Arizona.
Off record.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, let's see. I didn't say I was rooting for them. I said it would be a good bet. But I did make some money betting not against ASU, just kind of knowing ASU. I took Oregon State plus 11 yesterday, but when I was on my ride here, so that worked out.
Now let me ask you this: your DraftKings pick of the week. If you're saying to yourself, "Man, Mike, you're an idiot. I don't believe anything you have to say. Go against me then." But here's my DraftKings pick of the week here.
I think you're going to steal mine, but go ahead.
I am going to back the A tomorrow against whoever they play, whether it is ASU and the Fighting Kyle Dodds or whether it is USC. I do not care. I am backing the A.
All right, what's the set? If you're DraftKings, what's the line for both of those games?
If I was DraftKings, and they're much smarter than I am, but if it was DraftKings, I would put that line at about Arizona. If you're playing SC because they're better than ASU, no offense, I would put that line at about -4.5.
Yeah.
And if they were playing ASU, I would put that line at about -9,
8.
8.
Yeah.
What would Shane Diefenbach?
I think those are good. I think SC would probably be 4.5 is solid.
Okay.
SC's 5-point favorites tonight on DraftKings against ASU, so it only makes sense that it'd be 8 or 9.
What about you, Ben White? What's your DraftKings pick of the week?
So I'm obviously backing the A tomorrow, but my DraftKings pick of the week is going to come here in the next couple hours. I'm taking ASU tonight.
All right, I like it. I like it right there. I am all in on that one. Okay. Now, let's look ahead then a little bit to what everybody's got out there. And again, I want to all right, let's get to some comments here.
Real quick, we got a super sticker, a super chat from Pugs and Hugs. It's a video game controller giving a thumbs up saying good game.
All right, appreciate you, Pugs and Hugs.
$2. Pugs and Hugs, the GOAT.
Appreciate you.
I am technologically insufficient, as anybody that knows, so I didn't even know what any of that was until I had to message somebody and say I have no clue what this is. By the way, I will be on Fremont. I will not be zip-lining later, though, so I will. That is not going to be in the equation right there for people that the people that are curious about it. But now let's talk about U of A going forward. Then, whether it is ASU or whether it is USC. The one thing that I do think of that, I think that USC presents more challenges, and that's not to just dismiss our good friend Shane Diefenbach, but they are long up front. When you've got Big Vince, as Bill Walton calls him, Vince the Prince, Iwuchukwu, or when you have Joshua Morgan. Yeah. Then you got on the perimeter, you got a Trey White, you got a Kobe Johnson, you got a Boogie Ellis, you've got a Drew Peterson. they can bring you some. They can bring athleticism and size, and quite frankly, more athleticism and size than Arizona has.
Yeah, and I think if you're an Arizona fan, as fun as it would be to see ASU, I think USC is obviously the much better test.
Right.
I think when you look at what Arizona's done this year and some of the struggles they've had and some of the concerns that we have going into March is two things, right? Athletic guards, athletic bigs.
Right.
And USC, while they've been good, but they have been inconsistent at times, if Ballo and Tubelis take those matchups to heart, which they should, and they have historically throughout the year, it seems like Arizona plays better when they match up a little bit better inside. You're going to get a much better test and correct some of these issues that you saw tonight. And I think Arizona likes getting up against teams like that. We've talked about slow starts. We've talked about turnovers, giving up as many threes as they did tonight. If they're able to kind of fix those things and replicate that onto USC, it's going to be a much better position, I think, for them to be in come Saturday in the championship game if they're able to advance. So I want to see USC. ASU would be fun, but I think USC is clearly the better test.
All right, now there are people out there that are smarter than me that disagree with me right here. And you know what? You should disagree with me because you're probably smarter than me. So the first thing is, let's see, we had somebody in here that said that they believe that ASU is going to would be a tighter line because of how Arizona plays. I get that, because of how they play. I totally get that. I appreciate that point. But I think at this point it's just more of a talent perspective that I'm looking at. Yeah. And honestly,
it might be tighter than 8.5, but it wouldn't be tighter than USC's.
Would you? So who are you backing in that game, though, Shane Diefenbach?
In the theoretical game between ASU and U of A?
Yes.
I would probably back U of A. Well, we got a guest coming on here in a second.
We've got the GOAT coming in here, the great Brian Jeffries. And but all in all, though, I was very happy with everything that I saw out there. And quite frankly, this was a big game for the U of A. Now, Brian Jeffries, the man that we have been listening to since 1987, correct?
1987.
Yes, 1987. Let's try to get Brian in here because we're all right. Brian, come on in here.
All right.
Oh, sorry. This way.
This way.
I am slow at points. Okay, Brian.
How much it cost to rent this space, by the way?
You don't want to know.
It didn't, Brian, because honestly, they knew that you were going to be coming up here, and they said not only that, they paid us.
They paid you to come up here?
They did not pay us. I was just kidding with you.
This is Las Vegas. You pay for everything.
Absolutely. Brian, this to me was this game kind of encapsulated Arizona to a T this year, in that when Arizona plays its best ball, they are led by Azuolas Tubelis and Oumar Ballo down low. That has been their strength all season long, and honestly, that's, I think, what it needs to take them. Now, granted, they have a lot of other players that we can certainly talk about, but those are the two guys that I think really need to spearhead that attack.
Well, if you go back to that game at Maples Pavilion, Tubelis got in foul trouble. We know the story there, 4 points, no rebounds. And Ballo didn't really have that big a game either.
Right.
And so that was part of the game plan. They wanted to go early to those guys. They wanted to establish their game in the paint because of the fact, as you said, that's really where they've had their success this year. And I think it was very important to get that done early. And then Cedric Henderson, I think, probably caught the Cardinal a little bit by surprise with his first half and his entire game. But it was the big guys that set the tone and so consistent throughout the game that, they played the way they have so much this season. And, what's that, 9 games now, over 90 points, I think?
Right.
And so the offense was at its best tonight. There's no doubt about it.
And you know what? They were able to pick some pieces up again because Pelle Larsson until the end didn't have his best game. Mm-hmm. Kerr's obviously dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury. But like you said, you had Cedric Henderson picking that up. Courtney Ramey down the stretch making some huge buckets. But just going back to your point with Cedric, he's been, when you get guys from smaller schools, they can be very much hit or miss because, again, you're playing against a much smaller level of competition. But as the year has gone on, and granted, he didn't play well against UCLA, I get that. But he's kind of been that jack of all trades for Arizona that I think if you were to ask Tommy Lloyd, if you knew you would get this before you got him, I think he would sign up for it every day of the week.
Well, absolutely. I mean, his experience, number one, he's got size, he's got length, he's a very good defender, and we saw that tonight. Even though Stanford shot the ball well, Arizona was able to get enough done, I think, in the second half. They had a stretch there where they kind of took away their three-point shooting, and Cedric deserves a lot of credit for that. Both he and Courtney Ramey, because they're transfers, they've both been in conference tournaments before, so they kind of know what this setting is like, and I think that was important. And I think you saw both those guys were very confident
Right.
in the way they played tonight because they've been in the setting before. Next week is going to be the fun one for both
Right.
of them. Probably more so for Cedric because that's why he came to Arizona to get to the NCAA tournament. But anyway, Henderson did what he needed to do tonight on both ends. Like I said, that 16 points in the first half came out a little bit out of nowhere.
Yeah. Right.
But it was huge because Stanford was draining threes in the first half, and so Arizona had to keep pace. They didn't hit the same number of threes, but when you got a guy that can give you 16 like that in unexpected ways, it gave Arizona the lead at halftime.
It's with this team, Brian, I don't know that Tommy Lloyd, and again, I think by this stage, everybody knows when you're the winningest coach in college basketball history through you know a thing or two. I always wonder, though, if he's maybe not getting quite the credit he gets just because you lose Ben Mathurin, you lose Dalen Terry, you lose Christian Coloco, and I'll be honest with you, before the year, I thought this was a team that was probably more in that 20 to 25 range, and now you're looking squarely at possibly being a 2 seed or a 3 seed, depending on who you look at if you win this out. What he's been able to do with this team, with a much different roster, with Azuolas Tubelis taking the lead, I think is something that maybe some people are taking for granted.
Well, I think the Arizona program, unfortunately, a lot of people take for granted because they've been so good for so long. And so, the expectations are high. And I remember talking to Tommy before the season started, and he said, look, I know the bar is set high here.
Right.
And it was almost unfair how well they did last year to him because then everyone said, oh, look what Tommy Lloyd did. So they need to do the same thing again and again.
Right.
And when they didn't win the Pac-12 this year, there were some disappointed people. So, well, wait a minute, what happened here? Well, give UCLA credit.
Yeah.
They were the better team this year.
Yeah.
They are very good. But Tommy's done it with a team that's not as athletic as last year's team, but he went to the transfer portal, brought in, we mentioned Cedric Henderson and Courtney Ramey. Kylan Boswell has grown up before us here, still only 17 years old, getting better all the time.
Didn't know
He's
that.
only 17?
You didn't know that?
Of course, yeah.
I checked his ID, I said, you cannot gamble while you're
Brian
here.
Jeffrey's a man of all seasons. Not only does he card you, he also calls the game.
And, they expected big things from Oumar Ballo
Yeah.
and Azuolas Tubelis simply because of their maturation from one year to the next. And with Oumar playing behind Coloco last year, he worked so hard during the offseason with Chris Rounds to get ready, and it's paid off. And Azuolas Tubelis, it was just one of those things where how good he was last year. They knew he had a chance to step up. So, Tommy was able, I think that the teaching, the preparation they had going into the season was a real key. So I'm not surprised that, they won 26 games right now. They've just had to do it in a little different way than last year's team did.
Brian Jeffries, do you like pizza?
Yes.
Pizza with seafood on it?
Well, sure, I'll eat anything with seafood.
Okay, well, here, let me tell you about Mountain Mike's Pizza real quick. I am not Mountain Mike.
Oh, great, here we go, a plug.
I am not Mountain Mike, but Oracle and Wetmore, check it out. They've got great pepperonis, they got big-time pizza, and it's a great place to go and watch the game. Listen to Brian Jeffries while you're watching the game or whatever you might do. But again, Oracle and Wetmore, good food, good drink. Whether you have family, whether you have kids, you can go there. Mountain Mike's Pizza, Oracle and Wetmore.
Do they deliver?
I believe they do.
What's our address here?
I was going to say. And this shows you how smart Ben White is. I didn't even know. They are in California. I thought they were just limited to Arizona.
Do you pay Ben's way here, by the way? Do you?
When Ben comes to Tucson, he stays with me. How about that? So, he stays in the guest room, so I give Ben that. But I will say this. Let's talk a little bit about Kylan Boswell, because I'll be honest with you. When Tommy Lloyd said before the year, and I shouldn't have doubted anything he said, because everything he said generally turns out to be true. From last year, that Coloco could be Defensive Player of the Year, last year's team. He said this kid has the potential to be one of the better point guards to ever come through here. And, I've lived it. You called it. We've seen the Bibbies. We've seen the Terrys. And I'm not comparing him to any of those, but that's a high mark right there. And when you watch just the maturation of this young man at 17 years old and what he's been able to do, Brian, not only is the future now, but it's exciting to think about what he's going to be able to do going forward.
Well, the interesting thing to me, what Tommy has said, is that when he went and recruited Kylan and watched him play, he recruited him because of his shooting ability.
Right.
And it's turned out now that his defense and his ability to run the team have kind of outshined his scoring. And he's taken a back seat. And again, to show you his maturity, instead of coming in and saying, hey, I'm a big scorer from high school, I'm going to shoot the ball. Yep. He knows who the scorers are on this team. So he's gone through the other tack. He's become an outstanding defender. I mean, I think he's defenseman. I think that he's the best on-ball defender, and I'll get an argument, I know, from Courtney Ramey and Pelle Larsson on this, but I just think he is a tremendous defensive player. And he's going to be a great scorer starting next season. I think you're going to see him easily average in double figures. But to his credit, he's letting the other guys doing the scoring. He runs the team when he needs to. And, again, I just love his defense.
Ben White, you've traveled all the way. You got a chance to talk with the GOAT. What do you got?
Yeah, I think when you look at Boswell, I mean, not only is he somebody who's only 17, but I think what you said, Brian, what really hits the nail on the head is you look at what he does in things outside the box score. I mean, defensively, he's somebody who, at times, I thought tonight was Arizona's best defensive player, and you think he forced a couple turnovers, really shifted the momentum in the second half. What kind of point guard does this guy go down as come program time whenever he leaves?
Well, I mean, the fact that he's coming off the bench as a freshman, where a guy like Mike Bibby started as a freshman, he may not end up with the same career numbers as some guys that, and I don't know. Hopefully he'll stay for 4 years, but you don't know.
We can be selfish there.
Okay, well, I hope so, and I'm interested. That jump from your freshman to sophomore season, it's always considered probably your biggest, and so I'm just looking forward to seeing, him come out now as a scorer next year.
Right.
Yeah.
And being a guy that not only can run the team as a point guard, but can be a scoring point guard, and that's a great dual threat to have.
If you're an Arizona fan, do you want USC or ASU tomorrow?
That's a great question, Ben. I don't know. I mean, yes, Arizona beat USC twice, handled them pretty good in Los Angeles last week. A miracle shot by ASU kept Arizona from sweeping that. They're totally opposite teams.
Right.
USC's got length, defense. They've got Boogie Ellis. Cats did a great job against Drew Peterson last week. ASU's, how do you put it? I mean, they're a dangerous team because if they get hot, they can beat people. Now the question is, can they get hot? Arizona's defense is, no matter who they play tomorrow night, their defense has got to take a big step up. When I talked to Tommy this afternoon, actually on his radio show on Monday night, and I said, what's the one thing this team needs to do next to be successful in the postseason? He jumped right away to defense.
Right.
Arizona's given up 80-plus points in 4 straight games now.
Right.
Yeah.
Stanford shot the ball really well tonight. And so Arizona cannot allow that to continue. They've got, and I heard Tommy in his press conference here after the game tonight said, even though Stanford shot the ball, he was very proud that Arizona pressured them defensively.
Yep.
And so you do that, and you're going to force a lower shooting percentage. So I think that's going to be the key tomorrow night. No matter which team Arizona plays, they've got to pressure defensively. I just think USC's height is a problem to deal
because it's
with.
something you can't really recreate, and that's one thing that when Arizona goes into a game, they're taller than most teams. They're bigger than most teams, and USC's one of the few teams, that can counteract that. Let me ask you this, Brian, before we sign off. I think there's this misconception about Tommy Lloyd out there that, he's just kind of a aw shucks, happy-go-lucky guy. Yes, he's a nice dude for sure. But you watch him, I watch him, he will get on players, and he will get on players throughout the game if they are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's not just all shucks and smiles right there.
Oh, absolutely not. And in practice, he's the same way. I admire him because he doesn't swear.
Right.
He's not a derogatory criticizer of players. He does it by teaching moments.
Right,
and so, yes, it makes it very clear to them when he's unhappy with something they've done, but he does it in a positive vein where he wants to get their attention and, look, you need to do this better, and they listen to him because of that. They respect what he has to say, and that's why this team has improved in so many areas this year. And, Tommy is all into preparation before tip-off.
Right.
Because you notice – it always interests me, and I saw it a lot with UCLA when we were in Los Angeles last week, and until you actually are at the game, you don't notice that, they rarely run anything without Mick Cronin telling them what they're going to run.
Right.
It's very much look over to the side.
Yes. Yeah. Tommy's totally opposite that. And tonight, there was one time, I think, I don't know if it was Kerr or if Boswell was in there, where they looked at the bench and Tommy just looked away. Like, you know what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And that's why they've been so good with their fluid motion and so on, because they work on that all week in practice. And the question is, do they execute during the games? Well, they do, and that's why they've won 26 games.
How critical is that when you have young guys like Boswell and guys coming in who maybe are, like Mike said, fringe 20, 25? How crucial is that when you have guys who are able to come in and they know they're in that spotlight, they have to make the correct decision?
Well, I think the trust that the coaches give them,
right,
and they give them that from the first day of practice, to say, this is your team. We're going to show you how to play to win games. You now need to go out and execute what we show you. And so I think that's what they learn. Kerr found that out right away last year. It's his show to run, and that's the way he plays. And Kylan has learned that now this year, that he doesn't have to look over at the coach to see what the play is. He knows based on what defense they see coming down the court, which way they're going to go.
He is the great Brian Jeffries. He is Ben White. I'm merely Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast postgame show. Big shout out to our guy Shane Diefenbach back there for making me sound cooler than I should be. We will be back with you tomorrow. You have been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.